I'm going to try and fix this oil feed fitting issue. This is a brand new turbo, so I'm just going to take it apart and clean it. The oil feed fitting broke. I marked the compressor wheel and the nut, and I also marked it on the shaft. I'll show you some tips on how to make this pin really tight in here so you don't have any issues with the cage moving. You can use this light to try and figure out where the spaces are in between the hole and the pin. How tight I got it in there. So what I do to make it tight in there, especially if the pin wasn't the original one, in this case I had to replace it because the guy damaged the old one. Take this hammer and I just hit on the edges. Basically do around the whole circle. That's making the cage like cave in a little bit. And then I'll go back and take a file and trim it down a little bit to make sure that there's no sharp edges, but at the same time I want that metal being tighter around that pin. This is a different cage than we sell because it's a different model, but it's the same concept. The pin is very similar to the other model as well. And I got this tight, so I'm ready to put the cage back together and install the cage. I'm going to put the compressor side together first. There's 9 balls per side. I'm going to put them on this microfiber cloth so I can wipe them down good on the cloth so I know they're clean. I've also soaked them in gas already to remove all the oil so nothing will stick to them. And I just load up the individual balls. You can take a piece of blue tape and go around it. I used to do it that way, but I've gotten so used to doing it this way that it's not a big deal anymore. This is the front one. This goes on the side where the pin is closest. So this side is where the compressor wheel is. So this is the exhaust side, this is the compressor side. Now we're ready to put it inside the bearing cage. You can also check it for play this way. This is a brand new part, so directly from Garrett, so there's no issues with that. I'm going to put the oil feed pin right in between the two sides of the bearing. So it should feed the oil evenly. So this piece goes right here. When I took this apart, both gaps were at the same end, which is not very normal, but I'm afraid to put it together anyway other than the way it came apart, since this is my first time rebuilding one of these. But I think that there's a possibility the reason why they're not opposite is because there's a thin layer in between the two piston rings. So normally when you have dual piston rings, the two seals are beside each other. And it takes this O-ring that is the same as the BMW for the N63, that turbo, which is a GT25-660. And then the GT25-660 DSL, it works on that too. You can also push the rear seal and the front seal in to measure the gaps. I'm not going to do this since this is a new turbo. The turbine needs to be pressed in. I'll try and do it without pressing it in. We'll see if it goes in. This also had both gaps at the same side. I'm just going to put it back in the way it was. I'm not really sure if there's supposed to be oil here. Normally it seems like it wouldn't make sense to put it there, but I want to put it there just so it doesn't seize up or get caught and cause a burr there. This is where it's going to be kind of difficult. This needs to compress to go in there. The reason why I don't really want to do like spin it and put it in there in this one is because if I want the seals to line up in the same position, it's going to be basically impossible to do it that way. Take it to the press and see what we can do. We'll just have to like use the pick to make sure we guide it in place. I'm going to have to manually compress that by hand as I hold or pull the press down to compress it in. So we're basically holding this up against that front collar, which holds up against the cage, the race of the cage. Then the front race will hold against the back race, which will press against the turbine wheel once it compresses all the way down. I'm gonna oil this shaft up because it was really hard to get that wheel off last time. I had to heat it up So I'm going to heat it up this time, and the oil is going to prevent that aluminum from sticking onto the shaft. Perfect. I just finished this up. I had to just use wood here and then just compress it, and then I wanted to put as little compression on it as possible, but just tight enough so the blades aren't going to spin. I'll show you my marks. I had to make these marks so these won't be on there. Like if you have this turbo, I had to physically etch these in there